Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Garment Decorators podcast hosted by Target Transfers. Today Andy and I are going to be talking about mistakes that new businesses make, and in particular heat printing businesses. So should we jump straight in?
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to intro.
No.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about was buying the wrong heat press. Obviously heat presses are the bread and butter of any heat printer's business, and whether it's buying too cheap a heat press or going OTT and buying like a massive dual air fusion when you don't need one were the 2 points that I wanted to talk about really.
Yeah, so just to be clear, obviously we are part of the Hottronics group and we can provide you with the best heat presses, but at the same time as we want to stop you from buying a cheap, terrible one, we also are quite honest and we don't want you to be buying one that you don't need.
And wasting
that money that you could be investing in your own business, because we want you to survive and thrive. So that's why it's really important to really take your time and consider. There's lots of videos on YouTube about which heat press you should buy, what functionality you should need. It's very easy now to make the right decision on heat presses, I think.
Yeah, we've seen quite a few people buying too cheap a heat press in a way, and they have cold spots on them, they don't fuse the garment as nicely, and then within a couple of months or even sooner than that, people are having to buy another heat press like a Hottronics Auto Open or Max or something like that. So realistically, by buying the cheapest press you can find, you're wasting that money essentially, because you're going to have to end up getting a decent one at some point anyway. So the money that you spend on an import.
So basically the rule of thumb with buying a heat press is you need to be able to do the time, temperature, pressure that we always talk about. And there's a reason we talk about them, is because they're very important. Everything fuses at a very specific time, temperature and pressure. So this is non-brand specific. This is what you should be looking at for every heat press. We encourage you to go and look around and try and find the best heat press for you. But the three questions you should always ask the person you're buying the heat press from, or the business or the manufacturer, is, can I accurately measure time, temperature, pressure? Obviously, I'd hope that most of them have a timer on them as a basic. Most of them should all have a temperature readout, but how accurate that temperature readout is the really important thing, because the temperature readout can say one thing, but is it really that accurate? And
is it accurate the whole way across the button?
We found it quite a lot with people that are buying the cheaper ones, is that they tend to have to put the temperature up by 10 or 15 degrees versus the actual number once they test it, like a thermopen or something like that. Which is, I guess, it's one way it's a workaround, but at the same time is how long will that difference stay consistent? Is it always going to be just 10 degrees out, or is it going to start to become 15 or 20, 25 by the time you actually get into it? I remember our colleagues over at Transfer Express testing the Cricut Auto Open, and I think it was like 20 degrees out in the end when they tested
20?
It was quite a big difference.
I had no idea it was that. I knew it was different. I didn't know it was that much different.
You have to go back and check the video on their YouTube channel to be 100% sure on that. But even some of the best presses can be inaccurate. So, for instance, if you're in a demo room, ask them to test the heat on the press for you, so you can see it's accurate. Ask them to test all the way around the press, not just the middle or certain sweet spots. They've got to be able to show that it's accurate all the way through, because if you can't have accuracy all the way through, you can only press a few different items that way. You can't do full prints, or you can't do really small prints. So again, make sure that if you're going to really invest in this as a business, is make sure that top platen is accurate to the degree, or within 1 or 2 degrees at the absolute most, because it will always, some of them will fluctuate depending on the environment of the room it's in, which is fine. So make sure that's accurate. Make sure the pressure is you're able to accurately measure the pressure. Ideally, it should have a pressure readout that tells you exactly what the pressure is.
That is the easiest thing in the world, to just get pressure readout.
That's where it's one less thing to worry about as a business, and especially when you're first starting out, is that you want to be able to do quick, consistent and easy work to get started, get your feet wet and get going. You don't want to be able to deal with issues from day one. You don't have to. Because some people come back to you and moan, and a lot of people just won't come back to you if you don't do it right.
That's what I was going to say. So some people do come back, but you'd rather have them come back and moan and rectify it than you would the people that just disappear and never buy from you again, which isn't helpful for business long term.
And like you said, Molly, it's just only buy the one you need. If you're just starting out, maybe you don't need a dual air fusion. I mean, it is the best heat press.
It does look very cool.
It does look very cool, and you should work towards that because that is the most efficient, quickest, fastest, most accurate heat press. But at the same time, maybe have a 2 to 5 year plan of like, hey, I'm going to get this amount of business in year 1 and year 2 and year 3. And then by the time I get to say year 3 or year 5, I've built a plan in. So when I can afford to buy that machine, either upfront or on finance, but I can justify it by knowing I've got enough volume going through my business.
Yeah, that was going to be a next comment. It's not just being able to financially afford it, it's being able to actually utilize it for everything it offers. Like if you're just using a handful of t-shirts a day, you can have a dual fusion, but there's not really going to be any major benefit to having that versus like an auto open or something. So, okay, so we've said don't waste money on expensive kit that you don't need, aka top end of heat press when you don't need it. Which heat press would you recommend? Give me your top 3 heat presses for someone who's starting a printing business or just looking to maybe upgrade from an import press.
Someone who's starting their business, I would probably go with either the Auto Open or the Fusion IQ. I would personally, having spent so much time working with the heat presses, I want that pressure readout.
Yeah,
the Max,
I can't live without
the Hotronics Max is very accurate and it's very easy to regulate that pressure. But if I'm working towards volume or I'm working towards someone else operating that machine for me, I want to know that I can control that and let them go and don't have to worry about mistakes happening.
Yeah.
So I'd probably go either the Auto Open or I'd go the Fusion IQ, which is the swing and a draw press, depending on what I'm decorating.
Okay.
So if I'm decorating lots of sports stuff or decorations that need quite a lot of detail done in terms of transfer placement, vinyl placement, I'll probably go for the swing and draw because it's time away from the heat press. If I'm just doing like A4 and A3 prints, I'd probably go with the Auto Open.
Yeah.
But I'll go the 40x50 because I don't want to have to buy a bigger press. If I go for the smaller sizes, like the 28x38, I don't want to then have to buy another heat press in 6 months because I wish I'd had a big one because I've got a big job for large prints or something like that.
Yeah, because you can change the size of the bottom plattens, but you can never change the size of the heated platen on the top. Very good point. Okay, good recommendations.
Yeah, and as a follow-up
recommendation,
is I would say that another mistake is that people make when it comes to heat presses. So if they get the price of them for now is say you've bought the heat press, is don't let it sit there gathering dust. Because that's a big mistake that people make. They either buy the heat press too soon, or they don't have enough action once it arrives. It's really important if you're going to buy that heat press is that as soon as it arrives, you want to be unboxing it and you want to have a plan. You can't just be like, okay, because you can make lots of money from heat printing. There's no doubt about that. If you do it properly, you can make a lot of money.
Even if you get it out of the box and you have a plan for sample kits to go into businesses, at least you know who you're approaching and what you're approaching them with. If you get it out and then go, right, what can I do with it? You're just going to be wasting time that you could be paying off that heat press, essentially. That's
it. It's a very expensive coffee table if you haven't got a plan.
However, it's a very affordable business startup if you look at it from that point of view.
Yeah, so I'd say that's the other thing is just to get stuck in once it does arrive, because otherwise you're just going to...
Don't put your coffee
don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait for tomorrow to happen before you start printing stuff. Just have a plan, have some designs, have some transfers ready to fuse, because... until you start going and you start trying to learn how to use it, you've got no chance of being successful with it.
No. And also, shameless plug from a target point of view, if you are thinking about starting a heat printing business, we do currently have lots of heat press bundles on the website, which means you can get everything you need, included transfers, heat press accessories, all for less. Ships next day, discounted price.
Yeah.
Continue the podcast. No, I joke, but they are very good deals that we've got running at the moment. Good deal, so if you are thinking of starting one, I'd recommend checking them out. Do you want to go with one? Have you got us?
I was going to say the other thing that pops up quite a lot when people come in here for events or one-to-ones. I spoke to a few people at the show about this as well, actually. And it's kind of an ego thing, really, is that people think that they need to have a physical location to be a business.
Oh, you mean not the front room or the spare bedroom?
Yeah. Don't be ashamed to be running this out of your garage or your spare room. Basically, it's kind of my other advice is that especially at the moment with rates for
it's your overheads, isn't it?
Overheads and utilities that you would have it's very nice, and it's very maybe there's a romantic notion of having your own unit on a industrial estate,
But do you really need it?
But do you really need it? I know lots of our customers, successful, busy customers that have actually switched back to doing it in the garage, maybe extending the garage and doing it in there, and then giving up the keys to these spaces because they're like, just eating into my profits. It's just, and it's not, other than perhaps vanity, it's not really serving any purpose to them.
Yeah, I suppose it looks good if you're posting about it online or if you're filming content in that space. Like, that's all well and good, but 9 times out of 10 people are interested in what's on the heat press and the heat press itself, not the backdrop that it's in. And it might look impressive, like you say, but if you can get the workout in a room in your house when you're already paying to live there, you are reducing your costs significantly.
What kind of paint, for 50 quid, you could paint the garage a nice white color or whatever.
Hang some lights
put some artwork up there and hang some shirts, and you've got a nice studio, but it costs you a fraction of the amount it will cost you to run a unit. And it's, unless you need that space, but you've got so big and you physically can't hold all the shirts and stuff, is like, only get that unit when it's like you really need it. Because I'm sure there's lots and lots of units available at the moment.
Oh,
I don't imagine there's a wait list for actually getting into one. So
even storage units, like you say, if you're printing in your garage, but you have like a surplus of t-shirts and garments that you can't store, you could just get like a self-storage unit that you visit maybe like once a week, get the stuff you need for the week and have that and store the rest of it there. Because you're not going to print all of that stuff in a week, but you don't need to have it taking up room in the corner. So that's probably a slightly more affordable way of storing all that stuff if you need like a backup or something like that.
And all of the blanks companies, you can get their stuff next day anyway. So
so you probably don't need to store as much as you think you do.
No, because that's I remember when I was even when I was at sixth form, one of the things they teach you on business courses is having stock sitting on a shelf is bad business. So
wasted money.
Yes, it's like a fundamental thing is just don't have stock gathering dust, because it's essentially losing money. It's not just staying consistent, it's actually depreciating. And you might end up just having to throw it in a bin in the future. Just, you don't need it. So only get the physical location when you need it for your business, from a business point of view. And I guess it's like one of those questions with a lot of things is always try and, if you're thinking about getting one, is try and convince yourself not to do it, because then you'll find the arguments pro and for, and you'll be able to make a nice considered reasoning if you actually do need it at that point.
Plus your commute time would be significantly less if you were working out of a spare room or a garage, wouldn't it? How much time would you get back? Like, how long does it take you to get to work every day?
About 35 minutes
each way. So if you could gain that back as a printer, an hour or 2 hours each day, depending on where like your available unit is, because there aren't units on every block. Like, you'd have to pick a certain location and get to it every day. So you could probably print another 50 to 100 shirts in the time you'd be sitting in your car burning petrol.
Exactly.
So okay, the next one that I wanted to talk about was something that we've seen we see people do more when they're new to heat transfers, which, so if it's a new business you're getting into, then I can understand why this knowledge wouldn't sort of be common for everyone. But it's removing the background on your artwork before you order it as a heat transfer. We see quite a few first heat transfer orders. People's first orders come through with like white or black backgrounds on them, which then just increases the turnaround time, because we then have to go back to them and ask for the artwork, and then it just makes everything a bit longer. Whereas if we get the artwork transparent straight away, it just makes everything run a lot smoother. So just a side note, if you are ordering heat transfers, to remove the background before you upload your file to EasyView. So
this is if you're saving in Illustrator or Photoshop, it's basically a case of clicking file, and then on the save as options you get the choice of white background, black background, or transparent background. And you always want to go for transparent background, because one of the reasons that we can have such a quick turnaround is that there's a lot of artwork checking done in the system, and then we have second stage of anything that looks terrible, we always try and flag it for you. But as much as you can get the artwork done correctly the first time, your order will just fly through the system. So that means you can just hit order, you can upload your artwork, hit buy, and then 2 days later you're fusing basically. So that's why it's always important to, again, just it doesn't take too much time to just to look into artwork a little bit. We've done some episodes of the podcast and some live events with great Dane Graphics, Dane Clement, if you go back onto YouTube and look for that, where he shows you how to set up your artboard correctly first time, you just follow those steps every single time. There'll be no issues with your artwork. You'll just fly through the system. You won't even have to speak to us unless you really want to. And then you can just get to fusing because, again, you don't want to waste time going back and forth on email. And that's why we've set the EasyView system up like that, so that you don't have to upload your artwork, wait for someone to look at it. The system does so much of it for you. It tells you if the artwork's incorrect. It warns you if it's going to be blurry or if it's outside the lines. So yeah, just take a second just to have no background on it, and it'll look even better that way.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's just one of those things that you get into the habit of doing, that it's ingraining that habit in the first place. You do it a couple of times and then you just do it without thinking. Well,
as well, if it's your first time saving artwork for anything really,
how are you going to know?
Because when you open it up as like the image on Photos on if it's on your desktop, if it's Microsoft, it has a white background when you look at it, regardless of whether it has a background or not, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then you have to either look and take it off. And
So it's hard. You don't always know when you first look at it, but because the proofing system is, we print what you tell us to print. So if you leave a white background on there, we'll try and stop it for you. But if you want the quickest turnaround in transfers, then it's always best to not have it on there.
Yeah. Very good advice for anybody. As I say, EasyView just makes everything so much easier, doesn't it? I mean, every little system in EasyView that we've put in there, like you said, if it's blurry or if it's over the lines, anything like that, just makes it so much easier. Are you okay?
Yeah. My laptop just wanted to restart.
Right. I was like, oh my god. Okay. This is going to be a nightmare to edit this one. Should we do handheld heat press or just skip to? Okay, the next one is, I've seen this quite a lot on Instagram actually. People starting printing businesses using handheld heat presses over clamshell or the swing drawer, etc., which we know from experience isn't great for transfer longevity later down the line.
I might edit your phrase and say it's starting amateur printing businesses, perhaps.
That's a very good point, actually.
Because the accuracy, the accuracies is, there's some, and it's not to say these products are bad or anything. It's just that they're not as accurate, especially when it comes to pressure.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of them will be out on temperature. Some not by like 5, some by more, depending on how cheap you're buying them. But you can't regulate pressure with just your arm.
It's the pressure.
Which is part of the chemical reaction of fusing.
That's a snazzy term. I like that. We'll have to use that one going forwards. But no, you are right. Yeah.
That's it. Everything, all the back of vinyl and the back of transfers, they have a time, temperature, and pressure unlock basically. So it's exactly, we always say it's just like when you're cooking something in the oven, you don't cook it for half the time for twice the heat, but because that's the temperature something has to cook at. Everything heat printing is also recipe based, so don't mess with the recipe. And I guess having no pressure is part of the recipe. And if you can't control the pressure, or with a handheld heat press or just basically an iron, you can't control the pressure consistently because it kind of comes down to the user. And anything you can do to take user error out of the process, or user initiative, as they might think it'd be, out of the process, then do it, because it's always the biggest issue when it comes to return garments. Is there's someone's thought that I've got an idea, I'll try this. They haven't tested it, they haven't wash tested it, and that's when mistakes happen.
Completely agree. Nothing to add on that one. And it does come back to the same thing of like what you said at the beginning, using a cheaper heat press or like an import press. The customers that it comes off, they don't say anything, but they never buy from you again. And you're not going to know that because it goes out the door looking completely fine. You're not washing it 20 times. You won't see it come off, but it will eventually if the pressure's not dead on. So Cool. Okay. This kind of leads us into the next one, which is spending too long on products, which is something that we have seen a fair few businesses do over the years. And the biggest one that I wanted to address here, I know we've spoken about this before, but is second pressing when you don't need to. I think part of that comes from what you've said previously about that's just how they've been told to do it, or how their previous printers have done it and they just followed and didn't question
Yeah.
it. But I think part of that also is if you are new to the industry and you do a press, you do a pre-press, you fuse your transfer, you peel it, I think it's almost they're in a bit of disbelief that that's it and that's all it takes, when that's not the case.
It's not the case, no, because again, everything's designed to unlock at a certain time, temperature, pressure, and fuses. Unless we tell you to fuse it for a second time, you don't need to. There's no benefit to it other than you're going to lose time in your process. Basically, you can add steps in which you don't need to do. And like you say, is that, you know, there's some people that are listening to this who, as well as starting from scratch, there'll be some of you that have inherited a business, or you work somewhere and you might buy the business out, or, you know, if you come across a business that's selling, they've got heat presses. But just to question the instructions, go back to the source of where the vinyl or the transfers have come from and look at their recipes versus the ones you've inherited. Because there's so many bad habits out there. People think they know what they're doing, or they've got a good heat press and a bad transfer. They bought cheap from somewhere, or cheap vinyl they've imported from somewhere, and it starts to muddy the waters and muddy the process. So if in doubt, come and speak to us and say, this doesn't sound right to me, or how am I supposed to be doing this? We won't think anything's a stupid question, but so many people like have inherited businesses and inherited bad practice. So they're kind of set up for a fall, basically.
Yeah.
Or they're set up for wasting their time by adding 5-10 seconds on every single time.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, especially when you're starting out, every second counts, especially if you're just doing it in like your evenings or your weekends. That time is really precious.
Yeah, you don't want to be doubling that time, do you? Which is essentially, if you're fusing it twice, you are doing everything double.
Yeah. You know, and in all honesty, is that we do know more about heat printing than anyone else, because we're part of the Styles Group, which is the biggest heat printing group anywhere in the world. So
yeah, and we physically make the transfers.
We make the transfers, the presses, everything. So we know exactly how they're supposed to work. So if something's not sticking, second press is not the answer. It's talk to us, because there must be a mistake somewhere else. It could be that you're not pre-pressing, or there's something about the way you stored the vinyl or the transfers. It's not working.
Could be a seam or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it could be something else that's in the way. So just get in touch. Because that's one of the points I was going to raise is ask questions. That's a big business mistake, is that don't ask questions to the right people, or you're afraid to ask questions. But we're always happy to help. We're always really interested to see what people are up to anyway, for good or bad, because we know that we can help you in some way. We can either, if you're doing great, we can help amplify your greatness, or if you're doing bad or you're struggling, we know we can course correct on that.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to mention, is that for the ask questions thing, even if you're for the transfers not sticking properly, we've had like occasionally people have messaged in to say, you know, I'm having issues with this transfer or that transfer, and you hear customer service on the phone going, oh, are you doing this? Are you doing that? And they're going, yes. They go, right, send us a video of what you're doing. And the second our team look at that video, they go, that's the problem. And they can spot it a mile off. But if you're just on the other end of the phone, or you're saying what you think you're doing, but you're not fully listening to the print method, you know, like I say, something silly as a seam, or it could be something wrong with like the pressure of the press, but our team are so sort of well in tune to everything about heat printing that one look at a video or a picture and they'll tell you what's wrong with it. And if you are new to the business, you're not going to have all of that trial and error mistakes. So do ask us. Yeah,
I've heard of occasions when a customer's gone through like a whole box of t-shirts because they're making a mistake, and rather than phone us up and ask us, or test off the first mistake, test all over the same t-shirt to try and fix what the problem is, they just kept on going. It's like, well, the next one will be right, the next one will be right, the next one will be right. And then
how many t-shirts are in that box?
Exactly. Well, I think there's like 100 t-shirts or something. You know, it's 300, 400 quid down the drain, because there's bad practice. They're following bad practice with they weren't following the recipe, but rather they just went through and kept on trying to like sort of pig-headedly plow through and fix it, rather than just like, okay, after a couple, maybe just ring up and like, I'm stuck, help me.
Yeah. You think after like 3 or 4 have gone wrong, you go, right, hold fire before I waste the rest of the t-shirt box. Yeah. So definitely ask us if you do have any questions. The next one is the over pressurizing of heat presses, which I do think that people do without realizing they're doing it 9 times out of 10. Because whenever the thing I always think about when we talk about this is having people at shows demonstrating the heat presses for the first time, or when people come into our innovation center and sit down with you and you show them how the heat presses work and everything. They're almost amazed at how easy it is to use the heat press. And I think a lot of people think it should be harder to clamp it down because you're trying to clamp something like stick the transfer, like there should be force behind that, but there's not as much force as you think there should be. And it might not necessarily damage your heat press in the initial application, but if you do that 10, 20, 100, 1,000 times a day for the course of how many months or years, you are going to break your heat press eventually.
Exactly, and part of the problem is probably
not having pressure readout.
Not having a pressure readout. It's bad advice. I mean, I was at the FESPA show a couple of weeks ago, which is a big trade event where you go to the FESPA if you want to be a reseller for equipment of some variety. And there's a few different heat press brands there. So obviously, being nosy, I went and had a look at all of them.
Obviously.
But so many of them, I was like, oh, overpressure. And this is like when they're supposed to be in their optimum showing off phase.
They were overpressured
on the stands.
But just nobody realised they were overpressured, or that's how they
don't know if it's just bad practice. It could be that the people on the stands were following bad practice, or they're bad, or they're badly manufactured and their hard work. But
either way, not great.
No, exactly. But for one, it's bad for the machine. It's not good for the pressing. You don't gain anything. It's just as bad as under pressuring when it comes to the application anyway.
Yes.
You don't push that guard. You don't push the transfer in more. You can actually almost go over and past it.
Scorch the garment.
Yeah, bad for the user. You're going to get repetitive strain if it's hard work. So that person will probably leave at some point, or they'll give up.
Yeah.
If it's you, if you're doing all the work, you're going to like, this is hard work. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm giving up on this. I'll do something else instead. But in reality, you shouldn't have had to do that, because if you buy a good press, the engineering in the machine, or if it's air powered, it should be easy to do, because we want you to be out there selling and marketing.
Exactly. The next one I think is on your list as well. Photos and videos and documenting your process.
Yeah, big time. I'd say that it's another mistake. That the common mistake is that you get heat press, you get your transfers, you get your t-shirts, and then you don't get any business. And you think, I wonder why.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, who knows about your business? How many people have you told? How many times you post about it? Like,
none.
Like 2. It's consistently marketing and selling. That's why we try and make it easy for you with heat presses and heat transfers. So we've done our bit.
That's the easy part.
We've done our bit. So then you can get stuck into the hard work, like promoting your business, finding your customers, finding where your customers are so you can communicate with them. And just, I'd say the other thing is like telling your story. So many people I've spoken to that come in through these doors and talk about marketing with them, and we kind of get into it and start listening to why they're doing it. Like, oh, this is really interesting. I find it fascinating. And you go on to their like an Instagram, Facebook page, wherever they are, look on the website, none of this information's there. So you think, well, why, if I was your customer, why would I buy into you? Because
what reason are you giving?
And I'm sure it's just people being humble, and they're like, wow, people aren't really interested in that. But like, actually, yeah, I'm really interested in the fact that you had £10 into your name, and you went and got someone else to make some t-shirts for you. Then you sold them for £10 each, and you had £100, and then you got some more t-shirts, and then blah 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 blah. And then you eventually invested in equipment and started your own business, or whatever it may be. It's really, really interesting, and I think that's why customers will buy into you if they're like, oh, this person's passionate about this, or they've got an amazing backstory. I really want to support them and get involved with them. That's all part of marketing and promoting yourself and getting out of your own way, I guess, to promote your business and make sure people want to buy from you.
That is a really, really good point. And I do think as well, it comes down to yes, believing in the business and, you know, you get invested in the story and all of
Yeah.
that, that's all very well. But I think as part of it comes down to just having a bit of context as to the fact that you have been a business for however many years or months or whatever. Even if somebody, you know, gets halfway through what you've written about your business or about why you do what you do and go, oh, okay, that's enough. I know they're an established brand. I'll buy from them. Sometimes it's just that security of knowing that they're not just another quick turnaround, like cheaper. You know, some websites you go on and they can, if there's not a lot of information on there, they can look a bit sketchy. And you're like, oh, I'm not sure I really want to trust paying for something online if I'm not 100% on who these people are. So even if somebody isn't interested in your story, it's the context and the confidence that you are a legit business, I guess, as well.
Yeah, and so many of your competitors will make that same mistake and not bother doing that. It's a competitive advantage to be more proactive, and if you're following the processes and being as efficient as possible, that time will present itself in the week. I mean, I encourage you to go back and listen to the podcast episodes of Brand to Essex and Printing on Sea and Proud and Gifted, just to hear how these are businesses that are out there and putting themselves out there a bit more and be more successful because of it, just by either just talking about what they're doing or taking a picture of the work that they're doing and then putting it out there. Ask for permission, obviously. Ask, can I share your workwear that I've done for you? And then you'll find you'll get a bit more business. They get more business and they come back to you again because they're getting busier and then they get more work and they're happier. And other people are like, oh, that looks really cool. I want to be involved with this printing company and get them to do my work. It kind of is stuff that really snowballs just by getting out there and getting it done.
Exposure.
Yeah. And it's not, you know, we're here doing this podcast. It's not so bad once you get used to it either.
No, thinking of things to say every week gets a little bit challenging at times. But I mean, I think we just talk about heat printing all day long, and you know, the heat printing nerds out there clearly enjoy listening to it.
That's why I have a content plan, though, isn't it?
That is very true. Yes, a very extensive content plan. But also, everyone's story is so different. Like, you might be sitting there thinking, oh, it's the same as everyone else's. I guarantee you, your story is so different from anyone else's out there that you're going to stumble across.
Yeah. And I can, you know, there's a handful of UK-based printers that really tell the story. So even if it is the same,
true, actually,
then they're not out there telling it anyway. So they'll always be second.
Yeah,
and you'll be first. So
good point. Very good point. Do you have anything else on your list that you want to bring up?
One of the things I was going to bring up, and again, this is based on some comments that when we did one of our recent events, that something came up. So don't know if you remember. I want to say it was like October maybe or November. We did a whole episode on this. So go back and listen to the first episode we did with Kelly from Styles. And we talked about how to select the best blanks, the best garments.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Something that Kelly spoke about on that, which was really good, was the good, better, best approach to garment.
Better.
It's because I've written a very complicated way of it down to make sure I remembered it. But the best practice,
content plan, Andy.
The best practice is good, better, best. But what I found this customer was doing was they had good, better, a bit better, a little bit more even better than that, really good, best, excellent.
Have you written that all down on that piece of paper?
So rather than say offering 3 versions of a t-shirt, so you go to a customer and you present, okay, I'm going to be doing your workwear for you. Here's some options for you.
Yeah,
so
which level do you want to come in at?
Do you want the good, better, or best? And they'll pick one of the 3 depending on budget, what their identity as a brand is, and then that way they can make an informed decision. But you've only committed to 3 t-shirts potentially that you're going to, and you're always going to do one of those 3 t-shirts. So it means that you know how to fuse on all those 3 t-shirts. You know you can order those 3 t-shirts and you can get hold of stock for them. And you're making easy for the customer. But so many people I've spoken to, like, they've got like 7 versions of a t-shirt they take to a customer. And they bring every single color to the customer. In the customer,
that must be a massive box of samples they take.
And it almost blinds the customer, your customer, everyone who's listening's customer, with too much choice.
Yeah.
Too much choice is dangerous and it leads to sort of indecisiveness. So actually just remembering to stick to those principles of good, better, best, and only having, say, 3 options or 2 options even is fine as well. Because otherwise they won't make a decision. 3 options is enough so that the customer will either pick one will then be able to identify what they do want off the back of it. Now, everyone works with people. I'm sure that working with me, Molly, is things you sometimes give me a few options because they'll at least rather make a decision or know exactly what I want if I've asked you to work on something. But that's how you do it, isn't it?
Or vice versa. I'll come to you with a million decisions and you'll give me 3 and go, right, now pick one. I'm like, right, okay.
Exactly. But so many people are just doing too much.
Yeah,
again, it comes back to the spending the money wisely in your business. Don't buy every single t-shirt under the sun and offer it to your customers, because some of them are like this is cheap, I don't really want to use this, it's terrible to decorate onto because it's thin or it's rigid or something like that. It's just remember to stick to your principles, perhaps write them down and remind yourself of them. But the good, better, best is a sort of a classic sales technique for garment decorators. It's simple, it's effective, and it gets results. So that's what I'm saying. Don't offer too much, don't stock too much, because it's complicated and you'll sound very confusing to your customers.
Nicely said. There's nothing else to add on that point at all. No, it's a very good piece of advice for anyone starting out. And I think as well, it could be very overwhelming for people who are starting, that they go on to Ralloise and they see all the options and they think, oh my God, I need to offer this and this and this. And it's like, no, you don't really.
No. I think and the only other one I was going to say was just to, and I think we've spoken about this before a few times, is remember all the costs of your business.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something else. Okay, yeah.
Remember all the costs of your business. So think about when you're, building the costs into your product profit. Is don't forget to pay yourself. Don't forget things like shipping and packaging, because you need to pass all these costs on to your customer in one way or another, whether they realize it or not. You have to make sure that every single element that goes into your business, be it utilities, wages, anything else that's in that room where you're decorating with, your time is valuable. So you make sure you charge for that properly.
Yeah. And that was my next point, actually, is that people don't charge enough, not just from a product and utility and overhead point of view, but from a lack of confidence point of view. If you are using our heat transfers, Target transfers, custom heat transfers, or our Hotronics heat presses, our Stars vinyl, anything like that, you are using the best materials in the world, on the market for heat printing. So don't undersell yourself if you are using those products, because they are the best. They will last if you apply them properly, the lifetime of the garment. Just because you're a new business, don't charge less because of that, because you're still producing one of the high quality products, obviously depending on which t-shirt you decide to put them on. So don't undersell yourself, because you'll end up lacking on profit. And then as and when you do decide to increase your prices, there might be a little bit of pushback from customers who aren't used to that pricing. And you go, well, it should have been this from the beginning, but I didn't have the confidence to do that. And if you're using the best materials, you don't need to undersell it.
No, you shouldn't try and race to the bottom when it comes to pricing. It's because it's not going to, there'll be someone bigger and, with more resources that'll just bury you because of it. And none of you are going to really be successful. You're just going to end up making less profit from everything you do.
Exactly. And I think if you charge, don't get me wrong, if you charge way too much, obviously you may lose jobs because if you overcharge. But I do sometimes think if you undercharge, you could potentially lose jobs, because people don't think you're not a legitimate business, but they think, oh, it's cheaper, it won't be as good a quality, when in reality you're just trying to get the job in the first place. So all of these things that I think, if anything, is in people's heads more than anything, a bit like having a warehouse space. You don't need that. That's a misconception from an external perspective, really, isn't it? That's
it. I think, if the way to kind of gain perspective is to go into shops, or even just the supermarket, and just look around the aisles, and you see that everywhere there is the good, better, best in every single walk of life, or any buying process, be it like I say, you go into the alcohol aisle and you will have cheap, you have, reasonable, and you have expensive, but they don't have them in their some of those things because no one buys them. People buy all of these products. You just have to position yourself correctly and, prove that you have value by storytelling, and people will respect you for it. If you have to keep that position. If you're going to go for premium price, have a premium product and have a premium message to match it, and engage with those people and excite them and explain to them why they should have premium products and get them excited about wanting those products. Because some of the products, when you buy the wholesale garments, they're really not that expensive.
Even the more expensive ones, which if you're buying like a blank t-shirt and you're looking at, I don't know, £3 to £4 for the Bella Canvas ones that we wear all the time, versus like the oversized ecology ones that we were printing on the other day, they were, I think, either £6 or £6.50 for a blank t-shirt. And compared to the Bella Canvas one, that's expensive. But when you zoom out and look at the whole picture, that's still not a lot for a blank t-shirt if it gives you that added premium, eco-friendly message on top of that. So it's all about taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture rather than getting fixated on it's £1 more, it's £2 more, this equals that. It's like, okay, but how much can that £1 or £2 add on to the profit of that item?
Yeah, it doesn't have, just because something costs £1 more doesn't mean you have to sell it for only £1 more.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not losing profit. If anything, you're probably gaining a couple of pound more per t-shirt. It all depends what your customers want and where you want to position your brand. But was there anything else on your list of things to
I was just going to say, if you're, on the topic of if you're looking for help, don't be afraid to ask. Or if you want to look at good quality machines, just a reminder, on June the 28th, we will be hosting Headwear Live here at Target HQ. So you can come and see every single machine. You can speak to the experts. We'll both be there presenting. We'll have Beachfield brands with us, who are the leading supplier of hats and bags and accessories. Veloise will be there with all the information you need to get started buying products. So come on and pepper them with questions. Graphtech and their vinyl cutter will be there. So there's lots and lots of stuff going on. And you can learn from the best. You can ask these questions that you're always a bit worried to ask, or see for this stuff for yourself if you're thinking about starting or growing, or even wanting to get the most expensive machine because you're a few years into that journey and you're ready to get the best machine. Come and ask us those questions because we'd love to help you. Yeah,
and as much as this is Headwear Live, if you, like Andy said, if you have questions about the machines or the transfers or something that's not headwear related, still come to the event, because you might gain something from the headwear part of it, but then there's also going to be a very long networking period. I say very long, hour and a half, where you'll get to talk to everybody, and you don't have to
like-minded people.
Exactly. You can speak to like-minded people, and you can also speak to, like you say, us about anything to do with heat printing at that point. So if someone comes up and asks me to see a heat transfer, I'm not going to go, no, this is a hat event, you're not allowed to ask me that.
Exactly.
So yes, June 28th, tickets are available on custom.targettransfers.com. I think that's everything for this week's episode. Thank you, Andy, for joining me.
My pleasure.
Thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week with another podcast.